Hi everyone and welcome back for part 3 of the grey seal drawing tutorial. We're going to jump straight back in and start with step 6 where we'll be drawing in the fur markings to look a bit more defined. So as we'll be drawing in the darkest parts of the fur, I've picked out some dark pencils to use. We've got the Faber-Castell Warm Grey number 6 and the Cold Grey number 6, as well as the Faber-Castell Black. And I'm working across the body from left to right and really concentrating on filling in these darker parts of the fur. And as we're not really shading to build up any colour or layers, I've got a really sharp point to the pencil and I'm using it to create some quite defined lines on the body, just to really emphasize where these fur markings are on the seal. And of course I'm making sure to draw in the direction of the fur at all times. And by this step this should be really easy to do because we've already created so many pencil layers beneath, so we're just following along with what we've already drawn in. And I've started using the cold grey pencil here, as the fur markings do look like they have a cooler tone to them, so I'll just spend some time building up the markings using this cold grey pencil first. I'm also quickly using this dark cold grey to add a bit more detail and definition to the face and just really build up those darkest portions and make sure they really stand out and contrast against the lighter fur. And now I'm just continuing on with covering the fur markings across the body. And I'm using a combination of light strokes that are quite long and then some shorter strokes that I'm using a little more pressure with so that the pencil layer goes down a bit darker. And this combination really helps it blend into the rest of the fur that we've drawn in. And now I'm adding some markings to the flipper here, and you'll notice that the fur here is a lot shorter, so I'm using really short strokes with the pencil. And as we're not actually drawing in the sand, I am making up the markings on the flipper slightly, just so that it matches the rest of the body. And now I've switched to using the Faber-Castell black pencil, and I'm sketching in the nails here. And I'll also use this colour to start to emphasize some of the darkest fur markings that we're seeing, using the exact same technique that we just did with the cold grey pencil, and really just concentrating on the darkest areas of the fur markings that we can see. And finally, I'm using the warm grey number 6 pencil to finish off the fur markings in the centre of the body. And once you've sketched all of that in and you're happy with the markings that you have on your paper, then we've finished step 6. And we can move on to step 7, where we'll be drawing in the pebbles that the seal is lying on. And this step involves lots of colours, and you can have quite a bit of fun with this and add in the colours that you want, but I'll list the colours that I'm using in the PDF tutorial guide as well. So I'm starting off with the Caran d'Ache Steel Grey, and I'm simply going to sketch out all the pebbles that I can see and want to draw in. And this will just be the starting point, so I sort of know where I'm putting down the following colours. I'm not going to add too many at the front because I want the main focus to be on the seal, but if you want to draw in more, that's completely up to you. Now this is the Faber-Castell Warm Grey number 2, and I'm using this to fill in the gaps between those blue pebbles that we've just drawn in. And you can see I'm not filling in all the gaps, there's lots of white spaces that I'm leaving, and some parts are overlapping and some parts aren't. And it's really good to get a mix like this to stop the pebbles from looking too uniform and planned out. You want them to look all mixed together. Now I'm using the Faber-Castell Bistre, which is a light brown colour, and I'm adding a hint of these brown spots across the pebbles. And I'm still trying to keep it quite random, so I'll add like 3 or 4 spots in one place and then maybe only 1 in another, just to avoid it looking too uniform and planned out. And I'll start to blend out those brown spots using the Caran d'Ache Butternut. And I'm simply just going over those brown areas and blending them out using this pencil. Now I've got the Faber-Castell Burnt Carmine, which is a really quite bright pink colour, and I'm using this to add in a hint of pink here and there across the drawing. Now to build up some of the shadows underneath the pebbles, I'm using the Caran d'Ache French Grey. And by adding these darker marks across the pebble section, you'll really start to see it come to life a bit more, as adding darker shadows always brings out the highlights as well. And I'm also adding a good amount of this colour directly underneath the seal's body. As you can see, it's looking quite purpley and dark, and by adding this in, it really helps bring together the seal and the pebbles as one thing. Now you can see some of the pebbles have quite a blue tone to them, so I'm using the Faber-Castell Prussian Blue now, and using this to just colour in some blue pebbles. And I'll just quickly use the steel grey pencil again to blend this blue together a bit more with the rest of the drawing. And I'm quite happy with how these pebbles are looking, as I want to keep the focus on the seal, so I'm not going to draw them in too detailed. But if you want to, you can add in some more contrasting and highlights and make the pebbles really stand out. It's just personal preference, really. Now we'll move on to step 8, which is the final step, and we're just adding in some final finishing touches to the drawing. And this is in the form of adding in those lovely whiskers from the face. And I'm using the Caran d'Ache French grey pencil again to do this. And I've got a really sharp point to get those defined whiskers drawn in. And you do have to be quite confident and just go for it to make sure that you've got one smooth movement. So if you're a bit hesitant to do this, I'd advise practicing on a spare bit of paper first before drawing on your seal. Then he's got a couple across his head as well, which look really cute. And once you've added in all the whiskers, that's the end of the tutorial, and you should have a very adorable grey seal that looks similar to this.